I'm going to read this because I don't want to miss any of these important detail. But Destiny Jones was born here in the Twin Cities and split her upbringing between here, Chicago, and the homelands of her tribe, the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin. After graduating from the American University of Paris, Destiny returned to the US during the height of the uprising with a desire to aid her community and reconnect with her culture. For the last 5 years, she has been working in food systems and volunteering for food justice initiatives around Minneapolis before landing at NACD, the Native American Community Development Institute. Is that right? NACD, as the Food Sovereignty Co-Program Manager. Destiny is interested in developing a safe space for all that unifies the ideas of communal support and well-being and aspires to be an involved member in her community wherever she lives. She enjoys gardening. She enjoys learning traditional ecological knowledge from her family, preserving food, and she does not enjoy anise flavors. and that's the realness right there. As you know, St. John's is in the midst of two correlating formation processes. On Wednesday evenings, we've had chefs, parishioners, and members of our wider community of friends and others making meals for us to share in and hearing stories about how those foods connect to either spiritual experience, life ways, or the stories of our ancestors. And that's been a beautiful experience. And then on Sunday mornings, we've been delighted to have others come and tell further stories about food and life ways that connect to the meals the chefs will be making. So last week, for instance, on Wednesday night, Kevin Russ and some of the youth made a meal that they had cooked together on pilgrimage in Croatia, even though it wasn't Croatian food, and told the story of that spiritual experience and why that food, shakshuka, has the intersections of reconciliation in it because it exists across Palestinian and Jewish lines. And so it was an interesting conversation about that. In a couple of weeks, we'll be having the Reverend Bob Tubles, who is priest at All Saints Episcopal Indian Mission and also helps support their First Nations kitchen, where Destiny has been involved at various points. He'll be cooking a meal out of his indigenous spiritual heritage and food heritage and telling us about that. And we thought it'd be really cool to have Destiny come and tell us a little bit about the work she does at NACD and about her own connections to family and food and heritage. So without further ado, thank you for being with us. And I guess prayer, the Lord be with you. Let us pray. God, give us grace to listen with open hearts and open minds to the stories of peoples who have lived here and thrived here for generations, long before contact was made, for the wisdom that comes across the generations to us who now steward this land and share this space with people from around the globe and those who have been here long before us. Give us ears to hear and hearts ready to be changed so that together we may be better stewards of all that is given. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Jared. My name is Destiny, as said. And yeah, a little bit more about me. I did grow up in the church. My mother is African American. We were raised Baptist, and then my father is Native American. And his family is from the Bear Clan and the Ho-Chunk Nation. His family is rather traditional, so it was a very fun, I guess, doubled upbringing of like multiple cultures, both rooted in compassion and passion towards like a greater good. And I have always kind of connected that upbringing in the church, though I'm not, I guess, as consistent now as I was. But just kind of a lot of those teachings have followed me into my Indigenous food sovereignty work. And so, yeah, I guess just to get started, so the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin is, or it wasn't originally in Wisconsin, obviously, but here is a photo from the Treaty of I believe 25?
Yeah, 25.
That I found from a book that my uncle helped publish, that just gives a kind of general idea of where the Ho-Chunk were kind of ancestrally. So we shared our land along the Mississippi with the Dakota all the way up to Minneapolis. And then we went all the way as far south down as St. Louis. Our origin stories kind of place us as beginning as a people in Green Bay. And then I think more modernly, most of our populations are around La Crosse, Black River Falls, and then kind of down to Madison. So yeah,
Cindy, could I ask, what's the red line and what is the green colored?
yeah, so the red line would be ancestral territory. So it kind of follows all the way down the Mississippi
Nice.
to St. Louis. And then
Okay.
the green, I think, is modern representations of where a majority of the population is. Yeah, the Ho-Chunk were really proficient canoe makers, and so we're kind of river people. And so following river ways, we're also historically agricultural society. So the thing that I've heard is originally Ho-Chunk farms were as far as you could shoot 7 arrows across. So whatever distance that was how big a farm could get, I suppose. And then in around the 1800s, the Ho-Chunk were forcibly removed from Minnesota and Wisconsin, and a lot of our agrarian society, I think at that point, had turned into a hunter-gathering society. And there is currently a split between the two tribes. There's the Winnebago of Wisconsin, the Winnebago of Nebraska, which are people that were removed from Minnesota, like modern day Mankato, and then moved kind of south into Nebraska. And then the kind of pockets of Ho-Chunk, because we don't have a reservation in the state of Wisconsin, that are kind of still modernly there, are folks who resisted removal and just kept making their ways back to their ancestral homes until the government just kind of gave up, gave them 40 acres. So my family is one of the few, and sorry that he's shirtless, but I have a photo of my great grandfather that my uncle took. So this is the patriarch of my family, James Funmaker, who in this photo is probably like 95. He was a very proficient trapper. He was an herbalist. And he was taught all of these things as a necessity at that point in his life. His family would have been right out of or he would have been born right out of the time that they were kind of just finished trying to remove folks. And so, yeah, I've always grown up with the knowledge that he's passed down almost everything that he knew to us. And this photo always blows my mind because they always tell me that he was kind of just around and trucking and working until he passed at the ripe age of 100. And this photo, I was like, oh, whoa, he really was. And this was definitely his deer. So, yeah, it's a really amazing thing to have ingrained in the history of my family. And our current matriarch, which is my next photo, is my grandmother, Joanne Funmaker Jones. This is us in a really overgrown cornfield, but we were picking corn this summer, and I just thought it was so fun to have her there. She was a lawyer by trade, which is so funny, but she has, it's kind of a very interesting space to be in, to kind of have all of this knowledge and to carry it into, it's almost second nature, it's something where it's oh, I remember this day I was asking her just kind of oh, we should go pick the corn and you can teach me how to dry it. And she's just you don't know how to do that? It's so easy to her. It's just something she's done for such a long period of her life. So being able to learn from her and to continue to, I guess, develop food sovereignty, both in my own personal life and in the urban community of the Twin Cities, has been something that's been really exciting over the last few years. And this is a variety of the Ho-Chunk corn. As I said, we are historically an agricultural people, and so we still keep a lot of the seeds that we had ancestrally. This is a hybrid. From my understanding, there were 3 types of Ho-Chunk corn: one that was white, one that was blue, and one that was red. So this one's kind of like a speckled one. And yeah, we just picked it and processed it. This is kind of a photo from the processing journey. It was, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of shucking corn off of a cob, but it is really carpal tunnel inducing. And then you're finished, you have to lay it out on something that it can dry on the sun. I've heard of people putting it on their tin roofs, which is just genius. And then, but we just use screen doors, which is also really simple. And it's just something that my family does every few years, just to restock their surplus. Something that I think that is really special about the Ho Nation is they have a really deep cultural belief system, and a lot of that revolves around eating. So we keep a lot of our traditional food and our traditional knowledge in order to facilitate those religious practices as well. Um, that's sort of what I get up to when I'm down with my family. They're also natural herbalists and have really great working relationships, I guess, with plants and the world around them. But up here in the cities, I am part of the Native American Community Development Institute, where I am one of the co-program leaders in their food sovereignty project. Food sovereignty is a really big word for a really simple idea, which I think a lot of us like would understand, which is just the idea that people have the right to food. You know, they have the right to grow their own food, to know where it comes from, to make decisions that reflect either their identity or what they want for themselves, like in their food. And in the cities, to me, I think that looks a lot of ways. And one of the primary ways that I think it looks is like access, information, and access, meaning, I guess, access to both places to purchase, but also financial access, so financial freedom. So I run the Four Sisters Farmers Market, which is located in the East Oaks neighborhood, right on Franklin Avenue. We run every Thursday from 11 to 3 through the whole growing season. And yeah, our goal is to just connect the neighborhood to either indigenous goods, fresh, healthy vegetables, information and resources that will connect them to, I guess, indigenous culture in the cities, as well as just knowledge about nutrition. And then another way that that work has taken us is kind of like workshops related to bettering entrepreneurship for folks who are either thinking about starting their food business or are looking for ways to support themselves, I guess, in a more local economy, as well as ways to extend our season. So we're so lucky in the Midwest. We have this like beautiful, great soil and these very bountiful places to grow. And something that I heard in the first season that I was working at the market was that people like really love having all of these fresh vegetables and they don't have any way to extend their season. You know, they end up eating a lot of meat and bread in the winter, which is, I mean, I'm guilty of too. So yeah, we ended up hosting a lot of different workshops, and I think that I have a photo. Oh, this is our market. We're in a parking lot, so it's relatively small. I think at most we can fit 24 vendors total at one given time. So no Mill City, unfortunately.
And are all the vendors indigenous food growers, or just you try to highlight those ingredients?
I think we try to highlight those ingredients for the most part. We prioritize food as a farmer's market and growers and trying to facilitate that. But because we are servicing such a small community and urban growing, or you know, being a farmer is very difficult, especially in this economy. We try to make this space available to a lot of different types of businesses. We've seen a great increase in food producers in the last few years, but I would say it's a mixed bag of allies, indigenous food producers, and then craftsmen.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, can't see. Oh, I might have. Okay, so one of the things that we have been able to do is different workshops. So one of the workshops that we were able to actually host with Richie which was amazing. It was right in First Nations kitchens. Unfortunately, no photo. Was a preservation workshop in which we taught people through the U of M extension how to can tomatoes, which I love canning my own vegetables. And so it was really helpful. And that was a part of a series where we taught people how to better freeze their vegetables for the winter, and whether that be blanching, whether that be freezing to portion size, or just like different trading tips and secrets on how to, I guess, get the most out of your money in the season. And then also drying. So drying your own herbs or vegetables and ways to incorporate that into your food into the winter. In addition, we have been able to open up this little resource library, which has been very exciting in our off season, which kind of allows people to receive a lot of the information that we're trying to get out into the world while we're not there. So this is just a little kind of hub that we created in the entryway of the Powell Grounds parking lot, which is a local coffee shop on the block that has a ton of recipe cards, informational resources from folks that are really knowledgeable in food sovereignty. And we are also able to start a seed library through the donations of tons of folks throughout the cities, in which we're able to let or help people facilitate their own gardening and own food growing, which is super exciting. So the photo that I have included is actually one of the workshops that we were able to host, where we had a bunch of community members come and help us pack seeds into more manageable sizes for early farmers. And yeah, I think that the work is very beautiful, and it takes you a lot of places as far as kind of trying to identify what food sovereignty can look like, or how people want to access it. Because I mean, as we live in America, I feel like it doesn't need much explaining that there are time constraints, you know, there's the financial constraints, and as much as we all want to do everything and have so many to have more control of the systems that we're in, it's incredibly hard. It's made incredibly difficult for us. So a big ethos of our work is just trying to meet people where they're at and make it available to folks as however they find it, in a way that it's manageable. Because when I was reflecting on giving this talk, I was thinking about how there's always something new to learn, and there's always something new that you could be doing, or there's like a way that you could put a lot of pressure on yourself to, you know, be like a homesteader or a one-man show in which you're like doing it all yourself. And I try to really avoid that mentality, both in my work and in my personal life, because we've never done anything alone as, you know, humans. Like, we've always been a community. And so I think just trying to lead with that compassion and that continued effort into engaging in your community and kind of creating that space that allows that transference of knowledge and that sharing of resources. One of the things that was really beautiful when my great grandfather passed, James Funmaker, was that in his obituary there was this long list of adoptive relatives that he had taken on, which I know was just him passing down the knowledge that he held to whoever wanted it. And so I try to think of that and lead with that, as well as thinking about how, like, you know, it can sound very daunting, but it's also like really simple, and it's just as much as like getting our hands in the dirt together sometimes. And yeah, and so now as the season winds down, the market is officially over as of October 30th, and it's like this big breath of relief. To be honest. It's like such a long season, which is, I feel so lucky for, while I'm eating my way through it, and then when I'm actually working, I'm like, but we are kind of pivoting our work into trying to figure out like how we can kind of keep that idea of community and keep that idea of preserving what we have, and you know, focusing on our community and focusing on the resources that we can collect over time and, you know, store for when we need it, into workshops and that are guest facilitated in the winter. So we plan on hosting a tea making workshop for elders, in which we use medicines that we collected or herbs that we collected throughout the summer, just to help people understand how different mixes and blends can either help your well-being or help your stomach or help whatever kind of things that ail you. And so we'll be working with herbalists on that. And then we plan on taking kids ice fishing this winter, which is super exciting.
Yeah. That's a labor of love right there.
I was like, I would love to do that. And then we were like, can we get anybody out on the ice when it's that cold? We're gonna see. Yeah, I would love to answer whatever questions you have. I know that, I mean, I planned on being able to talk for 30 minutes, and then whenever I start talking, I talk way faster than I thought I would. So please, got any questions?
What questions do you all have for Destiny, and about points she may have raised, or?
One of my friends said that there's a indigenous restaurant in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? I don't remember the name of it.
You might be thinking there's a few. There's Owamni, I think, is the most popular one, which is the one that's like right on the river. I think they're moving into the Guthrie sometime soon, which is really
maybe.
exciting.
But it was interesting, the food that they have.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
I think they only work with vegetables and meats that were here pre-contact.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
No sugar, no dairy,
Right.
Mhm.
no
So
alcohol.
interesting.
Yeah, it's really amazing when you kind of get down to the bare bones of it, and you're like, wow, this is delicious, but this is actually like the same, like, I don't know. It's really interesting to see how like versatile you can utilize like corn or beans and things like that. And I think they're really great at doing that. I love it. There's also Gatherings Cafe on Franklin Avenue that I know is like an indigenous cafe, a little cheaper if from a price point is concerned.
Yeah.
And they have a great bison melt. I have to recommend that. So.
Destiny, you mentioned both your heritages, so African American and Native American, or Ho-Chunk and ancestry that leans in both directions. What food, what dishes like that you draw from both of your ancestries do you most find yourself at home with or craving?
Oh my gosh,
And you don't have to pick one. I know it's hard when you love food, so.
no, I think it's like actually it's the perfect medium. I'm a big fan of cornbread. So it's like it's like wow, I'm just a big fan of corn. And then I grew up all of our dishes on my mom's side of the family always served with cornbread, sweetened with honey, like Jiffy on the
Jif,
box.
yeah.
Yeah, and so great. And so I think that's still a staple for me. I find that I eat a lot of soups now. That's like a very Ho-Chunk thing to do. Is like soup is everywhere. So I feel like it's like the great combination. And yeah, I think that it's really interesting thinking about both of my identities, or it's something that I reflected on a lot when I like started this job, where I was like, oh, my mom's side of the family came up to Chicago during the Great Migration from Mississippi, and we had like no real historical knowledge of what our family was up to before like the 1840s, but you can kind of assume in Mississippi as African Americans, and just thinking about like the relationship with land that her family had to have had at some point in time, and my father's side of the family that has this entirely different relationship with land. In some ways, you know, like removal and some similarities can be drawn, and just thinking about how both sides are just, you know, natural stewards or forced stewards, and how a lot of the ways that it's been really healing to be able to do this work and to be able to reshape like my relationship with food and my relationship with the land, because yeah, it's I think been something that, you know, the US government has made us very fraught.
Is the corn that you showed is a sort of it's more of a field corn kind of, I mean, more like that than not. And you cut it off or something before and then dry it rather than drying
Yeah.
the whole cob and taking it off.
Yeah. So it's
That's interesting. It's different than a lot of the world, but maybe they needed it portable more quickly or something.
yeah, I think that might be it. Yeah, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with non-sweet corns, or like kind of the more commercial corn we have in the US, but Ho-Chunk varieties, or I think a lot of indigenous varieties, are a little harder. They're a little like firmer. And so when you pick them, I remember the first time I grew it, I just kept letting it go on the cob, like as it was growing, because I was like, when is it ready? It's not soft. And they were like, it's been ready for months. And so I had red corn on the cob, but so it's a little firmer. And so what you end up doing is you end up blanching and then removing the seed off the cob. I only know people that dry it on the cob if they're drying it for seed. But there's like so many ways to process this corn, because there's obviously it's very nutritionally dense, and so you want to be able to get those nutrients in so many different ways. And so my family blanches, and then we remove from the cob, and then we sun dry it. I know that there's also the process of making hominy, which is, you know, you dry it or you boil it, and something with alkaline produces a more soft bite. And then but I've seen it ground and pulverized. And
What were the traditional ways of processing the kernels?
I think a lot of these ways are still pretty traditional. Hominy is a pretty traditional way of processing it. I would say that pulverizing it into powder is also pretty common. I know people love corn mush, which is so good. And I was actually just reading about how some folks would keep the husks in the soaks and they would pulverize that as well. And if they pulverize that and they put it in with their ground corn, it would make the corn sweeter. That's a legend. I've never tried it, but I read about it recently and thought it was so interesting. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to process it, but a lot of our food was like dehydrated and then that's rehydrated, which is why I think like modernly we eat a lot of soup.
Just in case, oh,
I was curious, did you say you blanch it before you remove it? So that you take the whole husk and put it in boiling water for what, 3 minutes, 5 minutes? Is that to make the kernels easier to remove off the
Yeah.
husk?
Way easier, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, we that was actually kind of one of those things. Me and my grandmother were both really strong-willed, and so she's got her ways that she's done things, and I've got my ways that I've done things. And I was like blanching it. She's like, "You're supposed to like remove the kernels first, or something like that." And we're like, "It's so much easier if we blanch it first." And so he was reluctant to believe us, but I think that traditionally, yeah, it just like pops right off. You can do it with like the back of the spoon after you've blanched it, and I think it's a little bit more of a fight if you do.
Other questions? These are good questions. I love that we're getting down into the recipe of like, because that's where the real stuff is, people. Holly.
Well, after you just said that, Jared, I'm not down in a recipe.
That's okay, that's okay.
After talking about your relationship to the land, I was wondering about the Mississippi River, given that that river seemed to be such a central, prominent thing in the area that your people were in, so.
Yeah, in Ho-Chunk, it's really simple. It's just Big River, which is, and then it's really funny because there's like little rivers that they call like Little Big River or like, the division off of the Little Big River. But yeah, it's just been, I think, a really important part of our identity as Ho-Chunk people is water. There is a ton of connection, but I think that a lot of it, and the way that it's kind of discussed is just, it's sort of inherent, just like it's, just as like anything is like kind of in faith where it's like you just know that it's good and that you believe in it and that it's like the right thing. And so like, I mean, I feel like everyone I know has like a really close relationship, or everyone in my tribe has like a really close relationship with land or with water. I grew up like canoeing all the time, or like, it's really exciting, just like everybody else, to be on the water. But yeah, also trying to keep in mind like that we steward it has been a really interesting part of like just working in food sovereignty. One of the things that I never really thought about, it's like we get this like beautiful river at the start of it, and I was talking to someone who lived in Louisiana, and they were talking about how gross the Mississippi was, and I was like, "What? My river?" So it's like, oh yeah, it's like because everything we do like obviously follows it down, and so we have to be so super conscientious of how we're stewarding the land all the way up here because it's literally just like trickled down. It's trickling down, So, yeah.
Can I ask you, in addition to the corn, for protein sources, do the Ho-Chunk favor fish? Or were there, certainly there would have been bison, but not close in that geographic area, I wouldn't think.
I think it's really interesting. So we have an elk clan and a bison clan. So I'm like there had to have been some there at some point to some extent. But now I feel like we're pretty and I think historically we were a bit more pescatarian. That's my understanding of it as well. But now modernly, I feel like there's like this big emphasis on deer just because it's bountiful and it's and yeah, I think that my understanding of it is that meat wasn't always something that was like very easy to access, and so there are so many kind of cultivated foods, whether that be like corn and squash and beans, but also like indigenous tubers that the Ho-Chunk like sustained themselves with also, as I guess like to kind of help spread that amount of meat. Like I know that with this corn, like they always say like a very small amount goes a long way, which I've never heard about corn before. I'm like always eating them by the cob, you know, so, it's really interesting to think about like how different, our nutritional makeup has been like with the excess of meat, because, yeah, like, there's no Ho-Chunk word for different types of, like, the Ho-Chunk word for salad is like rabbit food, you know, so it's like, I don't know how often they were really just eating salads, and so it's like incorporating all of these different ways to get nutrients that were like dense, could actually kind of settle in the stomach, I guess, maybe were, a little bit more significant. There's also, it's kind of interesting, just because I've been learning the language for a bit of time, and, there's also things that have been lost, you know, just due to boarding school historically and just a history of removal. And it's really interesting the things that you can kind of piece together from your understanding of like what we're currently still doing, or the traditions we still keep, or the ways that we talk about things. And sort of like it helps kind of recreate this image of what our food systems look like. So I always think that's like really exciting. Like, what was something that happened recently that reminded me of that? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, oh, I recently was, or a few years ago, I was picking something, that the Dakota pick along the river with their toes. So you like have to go into like kind of like a bed of where the lake or where the river was, and there's like this tuber that grows, and it's kind of easier to dig with your feet than it is to dig with your hands, because you end up digging like arms deep, and it's like just kind of easier to do with your feet. And I remember talking with my grandmother about it, and she used this word for it. It's like kind of like a translation of like Indian potato. And then I talked to someone else, and they're like, that's not an Indian potato, that's circular rice. That's like how it translates in Hoca. And then I was like, okay, so that means there's like another tuber that like they're both getting confused. And then I found out there was like an additional tuber, and it just like it kept like unraveling, because like all of the like everybody's really steadfast about the difference between these things, because there was like at one point like a really huge cultural significance. And even though it's not like super common anymore for people to like go out and cultivate or forage these things, I think it's like really cool that I'm like, oh, that information's still available to me, because everybody's still like really militant about like not confusing the three. And so that's been really helpful.
I'm curious, Destiny, your biography went to Paris, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So as a person whose family was a part of a remnant that stayed on the land and made it work, you have this experience in your life of leaving the land and going somewhere else. I'm curious what you learned or experienced as you lived in a different place away from the land and its practices.
Yeah, I lived in France for 5 years. And I ended up in Paris because my only requirement for college was I had to be near a body of water. I'd never not lived near a big river or lake.
Not a great river to be near, but
Just really
Really
gross.
good.
Yeah. But it did the trick, and so I stayed for a bit. And I think the most surprising thing to me, because I had always taken it for granted living in the Midwest, was that it was the furthest I'd ever been from home, and it was like totally different to not know any of the plants, and to not know any of the like kind of ecological markers, and for the season to be slightly varied. And it was like a little jarring to me, but I thought I could get used to it. And then I just realized that I couldn't foster the same relationship with the land that I had had in America. And I just didn't really, I mean, I love Paris. Paris is like very glamorous, but I realized that I couldn't do a lot of the work that I wanted to do, creating a community for myself, or kind of doing like the good that I wanted to do in certain ways. Like, I had a really hard time doing it there. There's a language barrier, there was a cultural barrier. And as much as I spoke the language, French people are usually, they're pretty good at making you remember that you're not from there. So it was
that was the kindest way anyone's ever said that.
So I ended up moving home just because it felt like every time I was going somewhere new, I'd be like, this is nice, but it's not Minneapolis. I don't know. And I was like, oh, I think something's calling me back. And the timing was good and bad. You know, like think I moved in June of 2020. And so I got back to Minneapolis, like, but it was just such a great catalyst to get involved in things. Like suddenly everybody had like all of these initiatives and drives and things to kind of spend time towards. And I was unemployed and it was the pandemic, so it was hard to get a job. And so it was a really great summer of just like being like, oh cool, I can help at this food drive and get to know these people. And I think my first job back actually just ended up being like I was a cashier at London Byerly's, and was like, this is so cool because I get to talk to people all day, even though everybody else is stuck on Zoom, you know. And so, and then it was like it's something around that time. I was like I was in the grocery store, and I don't know, this kind of part-time jobs are always like part-time jobs where you're like, I don't really want to go in, or like this isn't getting me anywhere. And I remember someone like said it really offhandedly to me. They were like, oh, you always like work around food. And I was like, oh, I guess I was like a barista, and then I was like a waitress, and then I was like, oh, and then I was like then I worked at this grocery store, and then I was like volunteering at like food shelves, and I was like, oh, I thought everybody did that. I was like, I thought those were just like the typical like kind of jobs you get when you're really young. And then I was like, oh, I think I actually just really like food. And so I started my job at NACD just trying to get my foot in the door. I was like, I'll be like an assistant, like I'll just be your admin person. And I did that for 6 months, and then the lady who ran the farmer's market was like, oh, we need a new manager for this. And I was like, oh, I've never heard of a job that I thought would fit me better. And so I've been there for 3 years now, which has been really good.
Can we get back to cornbread?
Yeah.
I made cornbread from Trader Joe's and I felt so guilty. The first ingredient was corn, and then there were 2.5 inches of additives.
Whoa.
So yeah, let's not do that again. I love cornbread. Don't mean to put you on the spot. Did you say Jiffy?
Jif, yeah, just the Jif blue box. I mean, that's my classic, but
I bet not so many additives.
I
Would
It's like a big mix.
cornbread be different? Maybe they don't even make cornbread the way we think of it.
yeah, I feel like it's I've definitely had like corn meal utilized in a way, but I think that cornbread needs a little, there's got to be something that kind of
Yeah.
makes it a little less dense, you know. Cornmeal is like quite, you end up with something quite flat. And yeah, it's very contentious, like the opinion on if fry bread is traditional. So I feel like a lot of people have switched to things like cowboy bread or fry bread, really easy pan flour kind of situations that supplement the use of corn. But I don't know. Yeah, I think I just do a traditional box of Jif, or there's a lot of really great, I believe, I wish I could remember the name off the top of my head, but I can find it if you're actually interested. But there's I know that there's an indigenous company that sells like a cornbread mix that I also have been dying to try. But yeah, old habits die hard. So I've been
It's gotta be better for you than what I made.
I just was wondering, since you guys were, they tried to remove you all to Nebraska. Do you guys in your treaty have any rights to use of the land? Like the Ojibwe have rights to use for foraging and hunting and fishing?
yeah, it's really interesting. So because a lot of our land is purchased by the tribe, so it's privatized in that way. I don't think we really navigate that as often. Like families have their homesteads, and then families also, and then we have like our land that's like owned by our government, and we have a small amount of reservations. And I was actually just questioning that with someone. I was like, oh, do people go and hunt on the reservations? Because I would assume that there's got to be some type of bonus of, you know, utilizing that land. But I was kind of mentioning this earlier, like the treaties aren't as like prevalent in our discourse as a tribe as I think they are for like the Ojibwe, which have like great treaty rights, you know, and it's really admirable. But I think it's because they're on a reservation, and so maybe some of that is like also slightly different. But yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know really.
No, this just wondering about the differences.
Yeah, yeah, I think that like for the most part, like yeah, I don't know if we have anything particularly. I know that if we hunt out of season, it has to be like okay by the DNR. But I don't think I know anything really else. I'm like trying not to tattle, but I'm like, I think coaches kind of do what they want. So I'm like, I don't know if they like
Yeah.
are getting like, are they're backing treaty rights. I think they're just like, this is on my land. I'm gonna pick this.
Well, yeah, if it's on your land. you
Yeah.
can Forage and whatnot, but I assume you also do some foraging on public lands
Yeah.
because, nobody's there to tell
I-
you not to.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too familiar with it in Wisconsin. So I guess I can't really speak to it.
I will say there is a legislation right now before the Congress around public access land and road construction that would essentially make lands within 100 miles of any federal lands. So think large swaths of the boundary waters, think voyagers, think all of those spaces that would become developed for border patrol reasons. And so time for public comment is now, and this is an issue that crosses political lines. And so I think there's a principle here where indigenous occupants of this land treaties were checkerboard and how rights were given, but as also co-citizens of this country, there is a sense that we often forget that we also have public land or lands that are available to all of us to practice these sort of food sovereignty things. I don't own any property to hunt on, but I can go out and pick mushrooms at a wildlife management area, and I do. So I think that commenting is really important right now. Sorry to that sermon brought to you by a clergy person who preaches too often.
Beautiful. That's exactly kind of where my thought process was going as well. I know that in the city of Minneapolis, like you're allowed to forage in any public park, and so it's amazing. I found like mushrooms like the size of my head on Lake Harriet, like things that you wouldn't really expect. And so I always think that that's such a gift that we have in Minnesota. I don't know if it's the same in St. Paul. I think it's a little bit less open, but there's
Better not to know and just
exactly
keep going.
Yeah, and yeah, I just always think about that like relationship with the land where it's like, if you're doing it in a way that's like kind of mindful, or if you're doing it in a way that's intentional, like there's so much to be gained and to learn, and it ends up making you so much more impassioned in all of these ways that like, yeah, these things that are getting passed, or these bills or these proposals, like you're like, oh, that's not good. Like,
Yeah.
like I didn't realize I had a stake in this fight. I've never gone to the boundary waters, and then you think about like just how much that can mean for everything. And you're like, oh, it's such a shame.
We are this city with a deer hunting season in the city. You can hunt. There's a small spot in St. Paul where deer season does open. So foraging may be slightly different, but very few cities in the country where you can go deer hunting. Yeah.
There was a blind deer hunt at a place that's also a open run dog park. And I made this mistake of going with my dog that weekend. I saw the signs, I said, oh, we're leaving.
Well, we have time for one or two more questions for Destiny. I want to make sure we make good use of her time while she's with us.
Oh, as manager of the farmer's market, how do you choose vendors? And I mean, are you looking for, organic food or food grown in a certain way, or food that is not, so that every vendor isn't selling the same thing? I'm just kind of curious how that works.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we kind of only have like 24 spots, so it's really a tight squeeze, and I've always thought that like a little variety at a market can go a long way. And the primary goal of our market is obviously to create food access, but that can be kind of difficult to manage, where you're like, I want to support the community and all of these like great artisans we have, and then it's like, but I also just like need to get vegetables out, or and I found that like the best way of facilitating or creating like this kind of cohesion at the market is literally just creating the relationships with a lot of vendors, and having this kind of like organic conversation about what the needs are, or what their development or their business looks like, in order to kind of create like this space in the market. So it's really hard, for example, to get organic certified. It's very expensive. But if I know that it's someone growing in a Minneapolis market garden, which is like it's almost like a community garden that you can rent out for yourself to farm. It's like I'm gonna assume it's kind of mostly organic because, like there's this person cares about stewarding the land, or this person is someone that I know personally. And I've been really lucky to be able to have the time to develop a lot of those relationships. We have this amazing, like kind of symbiotic thing that happens at the market as well, where because it's just such a small space, it becomes a really tight knit community. And my vendors will communicate on what they're selling so that nobody's in direct competition with one another as well. So, for example, we have someone who sells like foraged jams, and goods and syrups, Edible Arts Minnesota, which is amazing. And so she sells a lot of these things. And then I have someone who was like, well, I would never want to step on Simone's toes. I love Simone. So I only sell savory canned good items. And so you've got like the sweet and the savory person, who both kind of work in foraged materials. And then we ended up having a third person who was like, well, I just like save a lot of produce. And so a lot of my jam and my goods come from saved produce, and it's an entirely different market. And so it's like, great, now I have 3 people that are selling goods that are EBT eligible. So it's able to like get out there to way more people than, at a grocery store. There's this amazing program at farmers markets in Minnesota. I don't know if everybody knows this, where you're able to like triple your money. So you spend $10 in EBT and they're able to give you $20 more to spend on EBT eligible items. And so it's like always amazing when I'm like, oh, cool. So now I have like 3 times the amount of food that someone can come and buy on their EBT card than I would have if I had just had Simone, who I know like has jams and jellies, and I like had like cut that relationship there. Like being able to facilitate like that conversation or that space where people can have that conversation has made it so much easier to run the market just to run itself.
Thanks.
Can we express our gratitude to